The Rorschach test, also known as the ink blot test, is a tool used by psychiatrists and psychologists to ascertain a patient's state of mind. Random patterns are formed by blotted ink, and the subject will try and make sense of them, to try and see shapes or patterns, in effect to see things which aren't really there. And that's quite fitting for the year 2020, when the most PC, most fragile and wokest members of society are constantly seeing things that don't exist. It's as if they look at life through a special filter that makes them see racism and sexism and transphobia and oppression in everything, but curiously blinds them from their own narrow-minded bigotry. And I say this because in the eyes of a social justice warrior, I am guilty of the most heinous crime imaginable. Due to factors entirely outside of my own control, I am a heterosexual white man. I deserve to be shot. But today we're going to look at two examples where extreme leftists, or progressives as they prefer to be known, have put two and two together and made five. Both of the examples come from the USA, but make no mistake, this kind of bullshit is going global. First up, are you aware that pedestrian crossings, or crosswalks as they're also known, are racist? A theory has been doing the rounds on social media for a couple of months concerning American crosswalk signs. And apparently these are a form of oppression because people of colour and women are subconsciously being told they are not permitted to cross the road until instructed to by the white man. So, people of a woke persuasion, how do we know that that figure represents a man? It's not like it's got a cock. If it was meant to be a woman, would it have to have breasts? Because I'm sure people would kick off about that as well. And anyway, according to you lot, gender is a social construct. How dare you pigeonhole it, you fascists? So why is the man on these signs white? Well, this design has been used for decades, and before the advent of LED and LCD displays, they used old-fashioned light bulbs, and the most efficient colour for transmitting light is white. That's why cars don't have black headlights. Not only that, but it uses much less electricity to light up a few white bulbs on a black background than light up the entire background in white and then dim a few bulbs to create a black figure. On top of that, people with visual impairments find it easier to see a white figure on a black background than trying to pick out a black figure through a white glare. Strangely, road signs work on the opposite principle. They have a white background with a black figure. And the reason for that is if you're driving along at night, the headlights hit the white reflective background and warn you there's a hazard ahead. Now, a driver can't immediately see what's on the sign, but the message is clear. Something's coming up in the road, slow down, you prick. But what if we apply progressive thinking to this British roadworks sign? Look at that poor black man doing never-ending, back-breaking work whilst white supremacists stand idly by. Or am I just talking bollocks? Well, it's worth noting some of the other things which the most easily offended members of society have said are racist in the last 18 months. White people talking to black people, white people not talking to black people, smiling, clapping, swimming, obesity, parking spaces, milk and sleep. Yes, sleep is now considered racist. Next we have a theory by some particularly unhinged feminists. Now, this has been doing the round since the 1970s, but recently it started to gain traction again. And this is the theory that towns and cities are a tool of the patriarchy used to oppress women. The idea is that male architects litter cityscapes with phallic symbols as a way to assert their dominance over females. Giant penis-shaped objects like clock towers and flagpoles, symbols of male aggression. Going back to the start of this video, I mentioned the ink blot test. And I think anyone that looks at a city and sees nothing but dicks, that says more about them than the architecture. And of course the reason that clock towers and flagpoles tend to be tall is so people can fucking see them. But the real hatred is directed towards skyscrapers because, and I quote, "Skyscrapers thrust upwards, ejaculating light and raping the night sky." Fucking hell! So let's apply some common sense. The only places you find skyscrapers are towns and cities where land is at a premium. If you can't build outwards, then you have to build upwards. That's really not hard to understand. But this theory isn't done yet. It goes on to state that alleyways, which have been features of cities for thousands of years, are not in fact a convenient way to move between streets. No, they are intended to make women feel weak and vulnerable by subconsciously reminding them of their vaginas. I've never walked along an alleyway and been reminded of that part of a lady's anatomy. And if you do know a female with a vag 6 feet wide, 40 feet long with a street light in it, she's probably a bit of a slag. So in both these examples, we see people making something from nothing, seeing racism in a light bulb or sexism in town planning. And these sort of theories do more harm than good. Racism and sexism are sadly very real, but arguments such as these make it hard to have a serious discussion. The woke progressives who buy into these ideas think they're making a positive difference, but they're not. They make a mockery of the subject. It's hard to tackle real racism when there are people alleging that crosswalks are affiliated with the KKK, or there's some mad bird who wants skyscrapers torn down because she's got cock on the brain. They insist they are moving the discussion forward, but they're not. So let's stop calling them progressive and say what they really are. If you have a group of people being taken from their present position and being moved backwards, technically they are being retarded.